It's been 10 years since. I never thought I'd be the kind of mother who picked favorites. But looking back, maybe I was. And now, 10 years later, I can't help but wonder if I made the biggest mistake of my life. I have two sons, Jared, 27, and Nathan, 30. 10 years ago, when Nathan was 17, something happened that tore our family apart, and I haven't seen or heard from him since. My mother passed away when I was in my early 30s, leaving me with a few treasured possessions, one of which was a beautiful heirloom necklace. It wasn't worth much in money, but it was priceless to me. I kept it tucked away in my jewelry box, planning to pass it down to a daughter or granddaughter one day. Then one day, it was gone. I searched everywhere, turning my entire room upside down. I was frantic. That necklace was one of the last things I had of my mother. Losing it felt like losing a piece of her all over again. It wasn't long before Jared came to me with a serious expression and told me that he had seen Nathan take it. He said he walked past Nathan's room and saw him shoving something into his backpack. He even said Nathan had been acting weird lately, more distant, sneaking out, getting involved with the wrong people. Nathan had always been the difficult one. He had a rebellious streak. He got into fights at school, hung out with a rough crowd, and had even been caught shoplifting once when he was 15. I thought we had gotten past it, but I couldn't ignore the past. So, when Jared told me what he saw, I believed him. I stormed into Nathan's room, demanding the necklace back. He looked at me like I had lost my mind. "I didn't take it," he kept saying over and over. "Mom, I swear on my life, I didn't take it." But I didn't believe him. His past mistakes spoke louder than his words. I told him if he wanted to be a thief, he could do it somewhere else. I was done. I couldn't have a liar and a thief under my roof. I gave him an ultimatum: return the necklace or leave. He looked completely shattered. He begged me to believe him. He cried. I had never seen him cry like that before, but I had convinced myself that it was just manipulation. I told him to pack his things. And he did. I remember him standing at the front door, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his face streaked with tears. "One day you'll realize you were wrong," he said. "And when you do, I hope it eats you alive." Then he left. I told the family what happened, and everyone took my side. They believed me when I said Nathan had turned out just like my brother. Reckless, dishonest, a troublemaker. No one reached out to him. At first, I told myself it was for the best. He needed to learn responsibility. He needed to grow up. But as time passed, I started hearing bits and pieces about him through old friends and acquaintances. For the first couple of years, he struggled. He couch surfed. He worked whatever jobs he could find. Then, suddenly, nothing. No one knew where he was anymore. He had just vanished. I kept waiting for him to reach out. A phone call, a letter, something. But nothing ever came. The longer the silence stretched, the more I pushed it out of my mind. I told myself I had done the right thing. But then there was Jared. The son I had trusted. The one I had believed. Jared had always been the good one. The one who followed the rules. The one who never got into trouble. But over the years, I watched as things slowly started to unravel for him. He went to college, but he never finished. He switched majors half a dozen times, failed classes, and eventually dropped out. He couldn't hold a job for more than a few months. He made excuse after excuse. His boss was unfair. His coworkers were rude. The hours were too long. He still lives with me now. He's 27 years old, and while he helps around the house sometimes, he has no real direction in life. And lately, I find myself lying awake at night, thinking about Nathan, thinking about how I threw him away without a second thought. I don't know where he is. I don't even know if he's alive. I keep replaying that night in my head, the way he looked at me, the way he begged me to believe him, the way I pushed him away. What if I was wrong? What if I kicked my son out over a lie? Would I even deserve his forgiveness if I ever found him? Or is it too late? Update 1. The guilt and the questions. No one asked. I've lived with guilt for years. At first, I buried it deep, telling myself that I did the right thing, that Nathan had made his own choices. But as time passed, the guilt never really went away. It just lingered in the back of my mind, whispering to me when I was alone. A few months ago, my sister Linda came over for a visit. We were having coffee in my kitchen, and for some reason, I finally told her the whole story, Every painful detail. Maybe it was the guilt weighing me down, or maybe I just needed to say it out loud. Linda listened quietly, stirring her coffee, her expression unreadable. Then, after a long silence, she sighed and told me something that made my stomach drop. Apparently, some of our relatives had been wondering about Nathan for years. In the beginning, they had believed, like I did, that he would eventually come back, maybe confess to everything and ask for forgiveness. But he never did. And as time went on, the questions started creeping in. They knew Nathan was stubborn. Everyone did, but something about it didn't sit right. Why would he steal something so sentimental and then never come back, not even for an apology? And what about the rumors? Was it even true that he had gotten involved with the wrong crowd? It was then that something dawned on me. The only person who had ever told me Nathan was hanging out with the wrong crowd was Jared. I didn't say anything to Linda at the time, but after that conversation, the thought never left me. It sat at the back of my mind, nagging at me like an itch I couldn't scratch. Then, last week, something happened that cracked the foundation of everything I believed. I was grocery shopping when I spotted someone familiar. Nathan's old best friend, Ryan. I hadn't spoken to him in 10 years. It was awkward, but I approached him anyway, hoping for some kind of connection, maybe even some news about Nathan. He looked surprised to see me, and for a moment, we just exchanged small talk. It was stiff and uncomfortable, but I finally built up the courage to ask him something that had been gnawing at me since Linda's visit. The people Nathan was hanging around with. The bad crowd. Before I could even finish my sentence, Ryan's entire face changed. It was a mix of pity, disbelief, and what looked like disgust. "Did you mean me and his friends?" he asked, his voice sharp. "The bad crowd that helped the community? The club we had at school?" I felt my stomach twist. Club? The one Nathan called the bad crowd. The one where we volunteered at shelters, helped tutor younger students, and fundraised for charities. I couldn't speak. My mouth went dry. Ryan's face slowly turned red, his hands clenching at his sides. He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "You really believed that? You really thought he was out there doing drugs or running the streets? Maybe you should ask your golden child where he got those stories from." And before I could say another word, he turned to leave. "Why don't you talk to Jared?" he called over his shoulder. "Since he liked to label people as the bad crowd, when he was the devil you saw as a saint." I stood there, frozen, my heart hammering in my chest. People were looking at me. I could feel their eyes on me, but I didn't care. My hands were shaking, and my mind was racing. Had I been wrong? Had I been completely, utterly wrong? I left the store without finishing my shopping, my thoughts spinning. I had spent 10 years believing one thing, and with just a few words, everything had started to crumble. For the first time in a decade, I had to face a horrifying possibility. What if Nathan never stole from me? What if I had thrown away my own son over a lie? Update 2. The walls close in. After my encounter with Ryan, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in my chest. I had been so certain for years that I was right, but now everything felt like a house of cards collapsing around me. So I did something I should have done a long time ago. I started asking around. I reached out to old friends, people I used to be close with before I kicked Nathan out. And that's when I realized something else I had been blind to for years. A lot of people had cut me off after what happened. Some ignored me entirely, refusing to even acknowledge my messages or calls. Others blocked me outright. And the few who did respond, they were not kind. I had spent a decade believing I was in the right, but these people, friends, neighbors, even some of Nathan's former teachers, had tried to defend him back then. They had told me I was making a mistake, that I was being too harsh, but I had been so wrapped up in my own grief over the lost heirloom that I ignored them all. And now, after all these years, when I tried to reach out, I was met with cold stares and scathing words. A few people spoke to me, but they didn't hold back. "You're delusional," one former friend told me. "You let one son manipulate you into ruining the other, and now you want sympathy?" Another simply shook their head. "Everyone knew you spoiled Jared rotten. Maybe you should just focus on your golden child, since he's all you have left." Then they walked away. I tried to justify my actions. I told them that I'd believed Nathan was involved with the wrong people, that I had to make choice, but all I got in return were looks of disgust and bitter laughter. Then, finally, I got a real answer. I reached out to the mother of one of Nathan's old friends. She hesitated at first, but eventually she agreed to meet with me. When we sat down together, she didn't sugarcoat her words. "What you did to Nathan was despicable," she said bluntly. "You kicked out your own son over a lie, and you've spent 10 years believing it because it was easier than facing the truth." I felt sick. I asked about the supposed gang Nathan had been in, about the drugs, the crime, everything I had been so sure about for years. Her response was almost identical to what Ryan had told me. Nathan had never been in a gang. He had never done drugs. His bad crowd was a group of students dedicated to helping their community, a club at school that volunteered and supported each other. The so-called troublemakers I had been warned about were kids who spent their time organizing charity drives and tutoring sessions. And the only person who had ever labeled them as bad? Jared. I sat there, silent, as the truth finally settled in. I had destroyed my relationship with my son over nothing, over a lie. When I got home, I did the only thing I could think of. I called my brother, the same one who had stood by me 10 years ago when I kicked Nathan out. I told him everything. And for the first time in years, I felt the weight of what I had done fully sink in. Update 3. A family in ruins. The conversation with my brother and the rest of the family was both eye-opening and heartbreaking. Some of them were furious, not just at Jared, but at me. They had trusted my judgment, believed my version of events, and because of that, they had turned their backs on Nathan. They had helped shun him, all because of a lie. "I defended you," my brother said, his voice tight with emotion. "I stood by you when you kicked him out. I thought you knew what you were doing, but you ruined his life over nothing." Hearing those words nearly broke me. We all agreed Jared needed to be confronted, so we staged an intervention. When Jared arrived home that night, he was drunk. Again. He barely noticed the atmosphere in the room at first, but when he saw all of us waiting for him, his expression shifted. He tried to act like he didn't know what this was about, but the second I started pressing him, I saw the cracks start to form. I asked him flat out if he had lied about Nathan, if he had stolen the heirloom, if everything he told me had been a lie. He scoffed, rolled his eyes, tried to play it off, but the weight of 10 years of deception was finally catching up to him. Then, all at once, he broke. Jared admitted everything. He was the one who had stolen the heirloom. He had pawned it for quick cash, nothing more, nothing less. And the worst part, he had been the one involved with the gang, not Nathan. He had been using illicit substances. He had been the one making reckless, dangerous choices. And he had lied about all of it because he was jealous. Jealous of Nathan's friends. Jealous of his good grades. Jealous that people actually liked him. "I wanted him to suffer," Jared confessed, his voice unsteady. "I wanted him to feel like nothing, but I never thought you'd actually kick him out. I never thought it would go that far." His words sent a chill down my spine. The room was silent, filled only with the sound of my own shaky breath. My relatives sat frozen in disbelief. Some of them looked disgusted. Others looked away, ashamed for believing him all those years ago. I felt empty. I looked at the son I had spent 10 years defending, the one I had trusted, and I saw him for who he truly was. "I need you to leave soon," I said finally. My voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Jared's head snapped up. "Mom!" "You need to find your own place," I said, cutting him off. "You can't stay here forever." He looked at me for a long moment. Then, without another word, he nodded and walked toward his room. For the first time in my life, Jared had nothing to say. And I was left alone with the crushing weight of what I had done. I had believed a lie so easily. And now, I didn't even know where Nathan was. Update 4. Searching for Nathan, but no one will help. After everything that had happened with Jared, I knew I had to find Nathan. But I didn't even know where to begin. I reached out to the same people I had spoken to before, including Ryan. This time, I practically begged them for information. I told them I just wanted to know if he was okay, that I needed to make things right. But it became painfully clear that no one wanted to help me. Ryan and the others weren't just indifferent. They were angry. Some refused to acknowledge me at all, walking away the moment I approached. But others weren't as passive. One of Nathan's old friends, Marcus, was outright hostile. The second I brought up Nathan's name, his expression darkened. "Oh, so what is this?" he sneered. "You finally want to confront him again? You threw him away for something he didn't do, and now you want to track him down like some desperate detective?" I opened my mouth to respond, but he wasn't finished. "What's next? You gonna accuse him of being some mafia boss or something? Maybe running a drug cartel? Since you were so eager to believe the worst about him before?" I flinched at his words, but before I could say anything, another one of Nathan's friends, a girl I vaguely remembered from school events, stepped in and grabbed Marcus's arm. "Enough," she said sharply before turning her eyes on me. "Nathan doesn't need this, and neither do we." She looked between me and my brother, her expression unreadable. Then her voice dropped to something almost warning. "Don't ask us about him again," she said firmly. "If you do, we'll involve the police." Something in her tone made my stomach churn. It wasn't just anger, it was something else. They knew something. They knew where he was. They knew what had happened to him, and they weren't going to tell me. I wanted to argue, to plead, but I could see it in their faces. They weren't bluffing. To them, I was nothing. Just the woman who had abandoned Nathan when he needed me most. I left feeling even worse than before. Jared moved out not long after. He tried to talk to me before he left, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. The pain, the betrayal, it was all still too raw. Months passed. I still had no answers. So, with the help of some family members, I decided to make a public post asking if anyone knew where Nathan was. I don't know if he'll see it. I don't know if he'll care. But I have to find him. And now, more than ever, I have a horrible feeling that something is being kept from me.
Final update. The truth too late. This is Mark, Mary's brother. I wish I were writing under different circumstances, but everything has fallen apart. After we made the post asking about Nathan's whereabouts, a woman named Natalie reached out to us. She told us that she was Nathan's wife and that we could meet her at their home, 4 hours away in another city. Mary was overwhelmed with emotions, excited to finally see Nathan, but also heartbroken that he had gotten married without her even knowing. A couple of weeks later, Mary, our sister, and I drove to Nathan's home. It felt surreal pulling into a beautiful neighborhood, seeing the life he had built without us. When we walked in, the first thing we noticed were the photos, wedding pictures, family portraits, moments from a life we had completely missed. Mary gripped my arm, her breathing shaky. She was barely holding it together. We sat in the living room and Natalie offered us drinks, which we accepted. The conversation was awkward. She spoke about Nathan's life, how hard he worked, how they met and got married. She had a warm smile, but her eyes were filled with sadness. Then we heard something, children's laughter from another room. We froze. Natalie saw our reaction and softly said, "Nathan and I have 2 kids, Rob, 4, and Angela, 3. Mary started crying. "I should have been there," she whispered. She kept apologizing over and over. Then Ryan walked into the room with the children. Ryan, the same Ryan who had refused to tell us anything. And in that moment, I understood why. Ryan and the others had known where Nathan was all along, but they never told us, and I couldn't blame them. We had abandoned Nathan when he needed us the most. Natalie gently asked Ryan to take the children to their rooms. He silently nodded and left. That's when I finally asked, "Where is Nathan?" Natalie's sad smile faded. Her expression became unreadable, and then she said the words that shattered us. "Nathan's gone," she whispered. "He passed away 2 years ago. Cancer." Mary shook her head, refusing to believe it. No, he can't be." Natalie quietly stood up and walked to a shelf, pulling down a large photo album. She handed it to us, and we flipped through page after page of Nathan's life. His wedding, his first home, the birth of his children. The moments we had lost. Then, she called out for Marcus. He stepped into the room, his face blank. In his hands was an urn. Mary let out a choked sob and collapsed, screaming. I felt frozen, numb. Nathan was gone. We had wasted years searching for him, hoping to make amends, and he had been gone this whole time. Through her sobs, Mary asked why no one had reached out. Natalie's voice was quiet but firm. Because he didn't want you to know. He never wanted to see us again. Mary begged for a chance to be in her grandchildren's lives. But Natalie hesitated. After what you all did to him, she asked, you turned your backs on him so easily, all because of a lie. I don't know if I can expose my children to that kind of cruelty. Mary had no response. Natalie sighed and pulled out something else. A small wooden box. She handed it to Mary. Inside was the family heirloom. The same heirloom that Jared had stolen and pawned all those years ago. Nathan found it in his first year after leaving, Natalie explained. He got it back, but he never returned it. He held on to it until the very end. Mary just stared at the heirloom in her hands, as if she didn't recognize it anymore. We left shortly after. Mary didn't say a word on the way home. She just held the heirloom in her lap, staring blankly out the window. Then as we neared her house, I realized something was wrong. She wasn't blinking, wasn't reacting, just staring, completely unresponsive. We drove straight to the hospital. She was admitted immediately. They said she had suffered a complete mental breakdown. Later that night, I called Jared and told him to come over. When he arrived, he was confused. Where's Mom? I told him the truth, that she had been rushed to the hospital after learning that Nathan had died, that she had completely shut down. Jared's face drained of color. Nathan's dead? His voice was barely a whisper. I didn't say anything. I just handed him the heirloom, the very thing he had stolen and pawned all those years ago. Jared stared at it, his hands shaking. Then, for the first time in years, I saw him cry. He muttered something under his breath and walked out the door, still clutching the heirloom. Now all I can do is hope my sister recovers, and pray that, somehow, Nathan can forgive us for turning our backs on him.
What would you do in this situation? Let us know in the comments. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping family drama, shocking betrayals, and the revenge stories you won't believe.